Got anybody that can hear?
I hear you.
Okay, great. At least got some response. I know several folks are online here and getting ready to join us, and so good to have everybody tonight. Let me start tonight. We're going to have a couple of presentations tonight and start the evening with just a few kind of background comments about our process comments about the weekend. I hope all of you stayed safe. I've never heard any reports of any harm that came to anybody. It seemed to be a little less eventful than we thought it would be. We need to talk here in just a bit when we get to the assignments part of the discussion tonight at the end. We'll talk about getting everybody's assignments turned in and all the things that are going on there. But we will plan to reschedule some of the activities. Dr. Abernathy and I have talked about some of the activities that we had planned this past weekend. On Sunday particularly, we'll move those to the next class meeting. They'll really work out well, even as a culminating experience for the 3 weekends. And we'll talk in a bit about some of the issues or challenges we're facing with assignments being turned in and all of that. I know some of you are still struggling with that, and we'll talk about that and see if folks have questions. I know a couple of people will be joining us late as we get on into the evening. So I'll hold that for a little bit later. Dr. Abernathy, I'll pause and let you turn your microphone on and see what you would like to do to get us started, and then we'll begin with the presentations.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Boyles. Good evening, everyone. Hope your days were as fantastic as mine. I'm going to just launch us again tonight. I sort of like this little routine of bridging between the last presentation and the current presentations, since we have a week in between these, and in this case, we learned last time we were together, and Danita did a outstanding job in sharing how to make the shift to PLCs. So let me just start off with that. And Dr. Boyles, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in order to, have you already turned it over to me?
I have not. Are you ready to play the first video that we have?
I think what I'm going to do is just start off with a few Google slides of my own, Dr. Boyles.
Okay. Then let me turn it over to you then. Hold on. There you are. Okay, you are the host, and I have the presentation pulled up, the first one, if you need me to show it, or if you want to show it there, either way, it's fine. Just let me know. But you're the host.
Right. Yeah, that would be a big help to me, Dr. Boyles, after I go through a few of my own slides, if then we could shift, and if I could put it back to you, and if you could get us started on that first presentation, that'd be great.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, just refreshing our memories about information together with each other, just making the shift to PLCs. Changing the structure without altering the belief system will not produce fundamental changes. And I was meeting with a high school principal today, his personal growth goals for the year as part of the evaluation system. And one of his growth goals was on PLCs, just strengthening the PLCs in his school. And it was interesting, relevant to this quote, because I said to him, I said, now I remember sitting in the same chair back in April, conducting your summative evaluation conference, and just complimenting you and your school on what amazing PLC structures you have in this school. And he said, yes, we've got great structures, great processes, but it's got to go deeper than that. And I said, wow, how ironic, because I'm going to be stating that same thing tonight with my class. It's about structure, and it's also about beliefs. And, you know, when we truly make the shift, we are shifting not only the structure or the processes or the things we're going to check off or say we're going to do, but also just the way that our staff approaches their everyday work and what they believe about teaching and learning. So the authors did a great job of defining for us just the different attributes, if you will, or essentials to making that shift to the professional learning community type mindset. And these were the different categories, and I've highlighted leadership and focused school improvement plans because I want to say just a little bit more about those. When we think
Dr. Abernathy.
Collaboration, also shared mental assumptions, and those are on page 11. And if you're looking at your book right now, those are the if schools are to improve, staff must develop the capacity to function as professional learning communities. If schools are to function as professional learning communities, they must develop a collaborative culture. If schools are to develop a collaborative culture, they must tradition of teacher isolation, teachers must learn to work in effective, high-performing teams. I love the way each of those build on each other, but it led me to wonder, what if the team at its core is not high-performing? What do we do as leaders when we sense that that is the case? Does anybody have an idea?
I think in addition to reminding them of, or having the procedures in place, like you mentioned, but I think it's important sometimes to remind them of their focus. What is their purpose? And sometimes I've found that helps get them away from, the personal issues that might be hindering their team, or to get the focus back on learning or whatever they've, indicated their focus is.
Great. Start with the basics, with the parameters. I love that insight there. I think that was maybe Danita. I'm also going to ask you a little later on.
It was Carla.
That was Carla.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carla. I'm also going to ask you, I'm sorry, y'all. I have to listen to your voices because when I have this up on my screen, I can't see anybody. I'm also going to ask you they're not high performing, besides the test scores coming out of their team or their group. So another thing with collaboration, the interdependence. And I love this quote, again, from page 11. I'll let you look at that. But my question is to you is, as leaders, have you ever seen a professional learning community where the interdependence was it was almost a little bit on the superstar that was part of that PLC? Is that a bad thing? Is that something that needs to be addressed? Are there issues that can arise from that? Any observations on your part?
I don't know if everybody's like me, but I'm having trouble hearing the full question. It's like freezing up and then starting again.
I'm experiencing the same thing.
Me too. I can hear you for a little while and then you go out for about a minute.
Dr. Abernathy, if you'll turn your camera off, that'll help with the bandwidth issue, and I think it'll work.
Okay, let me see if I can do that real quick.
Go down to the bottom at Start Video. Hover at the bottom.
Okay, so you all can no longer see me, but you can hear me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Boyles. So my question was, have any of you ever been involved or seen experiences with PLCs where there was a little bit too, the interdependence element was a little skewed? You had too much dependence on one or two leaders and maybe other people not pulling their weight. And is that a problem?
It's a problem for sustainability within your organization if you have a few people who do the majority of the work.
What if they were getting good results?
That works as long as you still have those people, but if they're reassigned or moved to another position, then you leave a big void to fill.
Great. Well said. Thank you.
I've also seen that kind of backfire with the superstars, I think you called them, that creating friction in the group. with that person kind of wanting everything done the way they do it because of their results and not wanting to work as a group or listen to others' ideas.
Thank you. And let me just stop here and ask Dr. Boyles, that speaker who was just speaking, were they going in and out on your end, or could you hear them steady?
We were good. I could hear them fine.
Okay, they were going in and out on my end, so I'm wondering if I'm just for some reason having issues with my connection. I will try another slide or two, Dr. Boyles, but if we continue to have issues, I don't think this would be very effective, and we may need to drop back and punt, okay?
Well, actually, we can't see your slides.
Oh, you can no longer see them?
No. So, but that's fine. I mean, it's okay. I mean, but it's showing up as being your bandwidth is being low.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let me just ask one or two more questions, and we'll just sort of abbreviate my little launch here and turn it over to our presenters tonight. As far as making the shift, questions I wanted to ask out there was, what are the clues that you a PLC is not high-performing PLC? I can tell you plenty that I see when I'm in and out of schools. Perspectives and the different roles I'll have.
Dr. Abernathy, it is cutting in and out again. Let me see if I can restate your question. Your question, I believe, was what are the things you see out in the schools that trigger the notion that it's not a high-performing PLC? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If we need to, we can relay the questions. I hope everybody can hear me.
I think if they're not on the same page in the classroom, I know one of the clues that I have as far as an administrator, if the PLC is high functioning, then I see those teachers in the same spot teaching the same material when I'm doing walkthroughs. I know they're planning to get, so I guess the opposite of that if they're not high functioning, they're in totally different places in the curriculum, maybe not even on the same unit. That would be one indication for me.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. That was Carl, I believe. I couldn't agree more. You can look, obviously, at their collaboration and planning, how aligned they are with the research and the ideas that they are exploring. I would offer up one more idea, and let me just check. Are you able to hear me, Dr. Boyles?
Yes.
Okay. I hate I'm having to check every couple of minutes, but one other idea, and I'm throwing this out for you all to think about if this is not already part of your leadership style in monitoring PLC work in your own school or districts. And that would be, you can tell a lot about a PLC from when you look at the way in which they analyze data together and what they do with that analysis. That can tell you a lot about the effectiveness of them as a group and really whether or not they are high performing as far as their discussions and their actions and what they are basing those decisions on. And Dr. Boyles, I think I'm going to wrap up my portion because it's just not jiving with the technology on my end. So let's go ahead and start with our Changing the Culture presentation.
Okay, give me just a second then, everybody, to get everything situated on this end. Hang on.
And I do apologize to everybody for my technical issues on this end up here in Gaston County.
The wire or the string is frayed to your house, I believe. It's a little bit threadbare. I think that's the problem. So when we get this many people online, and what we'll need to do is we can, and I enjoy seeing everybody, but what we have to do is just kind of keep the video down and all that. Everybody's cameras off, and that'll use a little bit less bandwidth for us. So hopefully we'll work out right on this. Now, it'll take me just a second to get this going here, so hang on just a minute. And you all need to let me know if you can't hear this when it starts. I haven't started yet. I'll tell you when I'm getting ready to start it. But this should hopefully play okay. Hang on. Just a second. I have to start it first. And I have to unplug my headset and everything so I can do this, it appears. So just hang on while I do that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if this works. See if you can hear Fred and Bill.
Good day, everybody. This is Fred, and
Can you hear them?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
this is Bill. And we are doing the Road to a Successful PLC, and specifically talking about culture in a school and how important it is to a PLC, and basically the starting point for PLCs.
So hopefully our presentation will work as we work through this technological glitch caused by the rain. But we're going to go ahead and move into our presentation at this time.
All right, so we want to start off with some quotes on school culture. I'll do the first one. Put it as succinctly as possible. If you want to change and improve the climate and outcomes of schooling, both for students and teachers, there are features of the school culture that have to be changed. If they're not changed, your well-intentioned efforts will be defeated.
Second quote is from page 131, 132 in our book. If you intend to introduce a change that is incompatible with the organization's culture, you have only three choices. Modify the change to be more in line with the existing culture, alter the culture to be more in line with the proposed change, or prepare to fail. And I think both of these quotes are excellent thoughts on school culture. As you're all aware, it's pretty difficult for us to do things if we're not aware of the culture and how to affect change.
All right, so let's first off look at what is school culture, and we're going to start that with a video from Dr. Mark Wilson, who did a TED Talk, and he was actually the 2010 National Principal of the Year, and he's going to talk about school culture.
Most every day I'm with principals, assistant principals, and people who want to be administrators, and everyone wants the same thing, a successful school. They want their students to be successful, their teachers to be successful. But how do you go about this? How do you have a successful school? There's so many mandates with which we must comply, and we have to comply with them. But that's not the end of it. We have to go beyond that. We have to go into performance. We have to go into excellence. We have to build an environment of success. If you want a successful school, there's so many different pieces you could do as an administrator. But I would suggest start with culture. A culture of success begins with defining what culture is. Culture is the beliefs and priorities that drive the thoughts and actions of the people at the school. And the school administrator is the proprietor, the spokesperson, the keeper of those thoughts and beliefs. He says what they are. She does things that show people what they are. And eventually, you hear the echoes of your words in the hall. You see people carrying out the thoughts and actions of the school. And you've built a culture. So how do you go about this? Success is measured in a lot of different ways. It's often measured in quantifiable pieces with graduation rate, students in advanced courses, students who are doing well in advanced courses, and college placement scores. At our school, we had explosive growth in all of those areas, but we didn't start exclusively focusing on those areas. We had hundreds of people who visited our school. They wanted to come and find a nugget that they could take back and they could do this particular action. They could be successful at their school. But it wasn't about what. It was about how we were doing what we were doing. It was about why we were doing what we were doing. It was about culture.
Some wise words there from the former principal of the year. Several quotes that were taken from the book I thought were pertinent to this discussion. The school culture refers to the beliefs, perceptions, relationships, attitudes, the written and unwritten rules that shape and influence all aspects of the school. One that we're always talking about is the way that we do things around here. And I'm not going to read the other two to you. But culture is it's not like changing the decor. Altering beliefs, expectations, and habits that have gone largely unexamined for many years is a complex, messy, and challenging task. And those of you that, like me, that have come in behind a principal that was totally different, or didn't do things the way that I think they are makes this task very difficult. Furthermore, any existing culture is powerful representative of the status quo, will typically resist attempts to change. That's the last quote on there, and that's a really important one for me because I think the resistance to change is one of the biggest things we deal with. And unless we can get collective inquiry, collaborative teams, an orientation towards action, and a focus on results, make those part of the way that we do things around here, the effort to create a professional learning community is likely going to fail. So important thoughts on culture.
All right, the next little section is on how shared values shapes culture. The previous presentations we had from our classmates spoke a lot about this as far as the mission and vision and the values of the school and coming to a consensus within the school and agreeing what it should be and how it should monitor and affect the day-to-day decisions and actions of the school. So this is the interactive portion of the video, and we'd like to ask you guys, how does your school do this? Okay, sounds good.
Anybody want to respond? How does your school? Nobody? Can you hear me?
If you guys would like to pause this.
Dr. Boyle?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Go ahead.
is protecting values.
And I'm afraid, Dr. Abernathy, we missed everything you said. Say it again.
I was just saying, I thought the most important word in there is how a leader protects shared values. I think we do a lot more of that than we sometimes realize in our day-to-day work. I just wanted to throw that out.
How do you determine what the shared values are?
We have at our opening meeting at the beginning of the school year when teachers first come back. I told you we've had some dynamic leadership changes at my school, so I've kind of done this 3 different ways at my school recently. But most of the time we have a meeting at the beginning of the year. Teachers come and we talk about, where do we see the school going and our vision and mission. And in the process of crafting that mission and vision, we talk about core values. And those core values are normally at the heart of our mission and vision. And teachers actually do a collaborative process of coming up with what they believe their core values are as individuals. Then they share that out at their table, and then we come up with a buzzword list, a group of words that were highly repetitive throughout the core value process.
Thank you, Fran. I think the most profound thing you said to me, which is you answered that very well, but the most profound thing you said was we talk about it. And I think that's absent in some places where people don't talk about, their culture and their shared values. And that's something you need to spend some time talking about. So good point. Okay, let's go on.
Culture of success. You need to have a vision. What is it that you're seeking to do as a school? You need to have unity. There has to be a coming together, a collaboration. A vision of one person is just that. And there has to be empowerment. People have to be able to do. People have to be able to act. Those pieces together, they create a special culture of any organization, but particularly at a school. I would suggest that the people of the school, the residents, the stakeholders, have to come together. They have to answer a certain set of questions, beginning with who am I? Because each individual has something to bring to the school. Collectively, the group has to answer who are we? And once those are answered, you can move to those next questions, which are really critical. What is it that we wish to be and why? And how do we become what we wish to be?
Our next discussion is on reflective dialogue. And as the book tells you, this is an effective strategy for changing culture. One of the most important things, in my opinion, on the reflective dialogue is making sure that those discussions happen on a regular basis, to engage your teachers in those discussions and to do it openly and honestly. The author speaks several times about the dialogue is critical to change the effort for several reasons. First, without it, most teachers will find it difficult to sustain the energy necessary to improve their teaching. Because honestly, when you reflect on instruction, it's really difficult for some folks to look in the mirror because they think they've been doing it right all along. And even if they are doing it right and we're just making minor changes, it's sometimes difficult to digest that. Second, in the absence of systematic reforms to ensure reflective dialogue, educators are unable to sustain meaningful change efforts. That's a quote from Saracen. And finally, reflective dialogue is an important strategy for changing a school's culture because it represents a purposeful attempt to make conscious what is unconscious. And we used to say, we know what good teaching is. We have that feeling, that sixth sense, but we're not always really good at identifying that. And reflective dialogue helps us with that.
Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is critical friends. At the early college, everyone was trained in critical friends, which is essentially a way to talk to each other in a good way, effective way, and one that's not to make each other feel bad.
It's not threatening.
It's not threatening. We learned protocols, and some of you guys may have used protocols before, and based on what you're looking for would determine the protocol you're going to use. So, for instance, if you're going to do a protocol on a assessment you want to use, and you want to see what the other teachers think of this assessment or a project or something like that, then you may use a tuning protocol, which would basically be a step-by-step guide to talk to each other and who's going to lead the discussion, how the discussion is going to go, and then when the person's ready to end the discussion, you can stop it. But it's supposed to be non-threatening and just a good way to talk about things in a hopefully productive manner. All right, so I will download these articles for you. And this is actual conversations and the type of protocol that seems relevant for these. So that would be a professional dilemma, student work, teacher assignments, projects, even teaching. And then, Bill already mentioned this already, but the reflective dialogue is critical for these three reasons. Essentially, teachers without it won't improve their teaching practices. They can't sustain meaningful change. And then, I think you mentioned this one for sure, it represents a purposeful attempt to make conscious that which is unconscious.
Okay, stories and color. If you read in the book, Jennifer James, First to Culture, as the stories we tell ourselves.
Somebody's got their mic on. You need to turn your mics off so that we can all hear the presentation. I'll check that, please.
We have a slide that has a bunch of spread out. We're okay, but they're not okay. We have a wonderful faculty, but we cannot be expected to get results because the people in the community don't value it. Care too much, worry about learning. Kids here are so needy that we must focus on their emotional needs for our kids. Consideration. There's several examples. Solutions out there.
I sure did find some money. It's always a nice night when you find money.
Hang on a second, folks.
My change for my salad.
Who's got their microphone on? Carrie, is that your microphone? It's showing up as you. Carrie? Carrie. Yeah, obviously she started her flu.
No, not sick. No, I'm allergic.
Carrie, can you hear us?
Oh, that night when she called me in our class. That was last Thursday night.
Okay. I'll restart. I hope you can hear me.
I did it.
Let's wait for others.
Same thing.
I'm right back. Less than 10 minutes. I'm feeling the same way.
She sounded awful. I'm like, listen, I'm sorry.
Hang on, folks. This is distracting. I know you can't hear it. I can't hear it. Hold on a second.
They were watching me, but I couldn't leave.
Dr.
You
Boyles,
got the same thing you
Yes.
got last week.
I will try to call Carrie and see if I can get in touch with her.
Okay, you will please.
I said, what did you eat?
What?
I said, what did you eat?
You thought she was pregnant?
Yeah, she
Hold on a second.
She said, I got Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree, girl, buy the good stuff. For your pregnancy, buy the good stuff. At
I
least.
said, Dollar Tree should be happy. You got about two. I said, you might want to
Now
go
they
up
can
a little
talk up a storm.
Okay, I think we got that. Apologize, folks.
Classic examples.
Let me back it up just a little bit here so we can catch all
We have
that.
wonderful faculty, but we cannot be expected to get results because the people in the community don't value education. How many times have you heard that? We care too much to worry about learning. The kids here are so needy that we must focus on their emotional needs or our kids' academic concerns.
Yes, ma'am. What's your name?
There's several other examples that she lists in the book.
Can I have the Newman to go order, please? Newman to go.
Treatment depends on increased state or federal support for education.
10-4.
Federal involvement.
No, it's not
These
okay.
brothers take action that will improve our school. Basically, when she talks about all these stories, she says these stories represent classic examples of the rationalization. And I don't know about you, but I know that they can rationalize with the best of them. Sims argues that the effort to create any learning organization requires a never-ending process
1663, 1616.
that embody the organization's purpose.
Oh, you're fine.
So the suggestion from the book, and one that I
I was waiting on you, and you waiting on me.
instead of the stories of rationalization, go more towards the stories of examples of being a learning community and every opportunity you can.
So this next slide basically continues what Bill was saying, or he's actually promoting setting examples for the rest of the staff, and then promoting.
I need a manager for code 1 and line 1. Any manager line 1, code 1.
Everyone involved.
I was at the tennis course one afternoon. Two students, Tyler and Jared, walked up to me. And they said, Doc,
Yeah, I think that's it.
talk to you about. I said, sure. Nick Walker. And I said, sure, I know Nick Walker. He said, he's one of the best kids we have at school.
Sam.
We got a lot of good kids. They said, Doc, do you know he holds the door open for everybody at lunch every day at school? I said, yeah, Nick is great.
And as soon as they get the biscuits in there, they'll get your order, okay?
We want everybody to know it.
We're going to ask that you check it before you go. Yes, ma'am.
And Tyler
Next guest.
said, we want to have an assembly. We're going to bring all the students to school together.
A lot of Robertson orders today.
Give them a plaque in front of everyone.
Robertson.
Our school's got a place for it. That wasn't so unusual.
Thank you, Taylor Carlos. My next question. Yes, sir, that's it. 10:45.
Only a few people. And when we gathered together, the cheerleaders went up to the stand and got Nick and brought him down to the floor. And the football player made a tunnel. And Nick was walking through the tunnel to the Nick was a big chair, a throne, because Nick was key for the day. As he sat in the chair, people came up one at a time. There were songs, there were testimonials. And the head dietitian, Miss Rhonda, grabbed the microphone and she said, Nick, everybody knows you hold the door open every day for people to come in. But they don't know. Just before you do that, you come back in the kitchen where our ladies are cooking for everyone. And you know every one of the lunch ladies by name. And you know their children's names. And you ask about them. And you tell them how pretty they look that day. Then Nick's teacher grabbed the microphone, Miss Holloway. And she did the most powerful thing I saw in 25 years of education. She said, if Nick has given you a compliment this year, would you stand up? We had 1,000 students and 120 staff members in there, and nearly everybody in the room stood because of one person who made such a big difference at our school. One Morgan, a culture of success brought together by this vision of what student success really looked like. Well, we concluded the ceremony. Tyler and Jared read their plaque, and it read, to Nick Walker, Mr. Morgan County, for showing all of the students and teachers here how we should treat each other. It's success. It's not a test score, but we did well on all the test scores because we focused on the big pieces first. We came together with a vision. We empowered people to act, and we had success.
That's a terrific story, which leads us into the next segment, discussing how we need to continue to celebrate. That has to be part of the school culture, and we must have those simple rituals. I wanted to read a quote from the book that I thought was pretty pertinent. Ritual and ceremony help us experience the unseen webs of significance that tie a community together. Maybe grand ceremonies for special occasions, but organizations also need simple rituals that infuse meaning and purpose into daily routine. Without ritual and ceremony, transitions become incomplete, a cluttering of comings and goings. Life becomes an endless set of Wednesdays. I know we've talked in detail about this in previous courses, but little things like the sticky note in the box saying, hey, you did a great job, or just a one-line email saying thanks. Those kind of things make a big difference, and they are small celebrations and not something that costs us inordinately or can be looked upon as something that's maybe not quite what they thought it was.
All right, so why should we celebrate? Obviously, the most important reason is that people feel appreciated. And if you want to be part of a culture and improve your culture, then obviously you're going to celebrate everyone and make everyone feel important and they contribute to the team. It also reinforces the shared values, and we mentioned that before, that whatever the celebration that you do needs to incorporate those values and that vision and mission for the school. And it's frankly fun. I mean, it makes the school a good place to be. People want to be your school when you're constantly celebrating what the students and faculty and community is doing.
Okay, the book goes into some tips on incorporating celebration into the culture of a school. Explicitly stating the purpose. Pretending, that's fairly obvious, but sometimes we forget that. Making the celebration everyone's responsibility, and simple ways to do that. Establish a committee for selecting staff to be honored at each meeting. Is usually preferable to having the principal act as the sole arbiter. I've been on both sides of that as a teacher and as a principal, and I definitely agree that you want to do that as a group because sometimes it's looked on then as the principal's pet or something like that if it's not chosen that way. Establishing clear links between public recognition and the advancement of vision and values. And when recognition is explicitly linked to efforts that advance the vision or demonstrate the values of a learning community, it can make a significant contribution to the objective. But the recognition will have little impact if staff believes that it is presented randomly and it has no purpose to it. Create opportunities for lots of winners. I think you see that all the time. You don't want to establish an artificial cap of one teacher a week or anything else like that. That's not going to be beneficial in the big scheme of things. So what does your school do to celebrate? It's one of those moments for you right now, so we'll let you pause and think about that.
Anybody want to respond there?
At my school, at every faculty meeting, we have a part that's called celebrations at the beginning of the meeting where we allow the teachers and the faculty and staff to share out celebrations that they have for each other. And then we run through the normal business of the meeting. And normally at the end of the meeting, the administration, we give out an award. Each administrator picks 2 teachers or 2 faculty members, and we try to align them with standards and show people how well they've been doing with certain standards. And we make them like the teacher of the month, and they all get a certificate, and a certificate is placed outside of their door. The goal is for everyone to have a certificate outside of their door by the end of the year, and we try to do that every faculty meeting, which normally occurs maybe every month, or some months we skip due to holidays.
That's a good idea.
We do what we call Cougar compliments because we're the Cougars. But it's actually just a Google form that the teachers go in and nominate each other for whatever reason it is, and then we read them all out and give them certificates at each faculty meeting. And the person who has the most Cougar compliments each month is our 007 winner. We do like the whole James Bond theme and everything, because we have a parking place that's right up near the front door. That's parking place number 7. So they're our 007, and they get like a certificate to a local area business or something that we've had donated, and they get to park in that close parking spot for the month until the next month.
So I guess the question then would be, do you have an M and a Q and a Miss Moneypenny?
Dr. Boyles.
Go ahead.
Hey, this.
We're having trouble hearing you.
Able to hear me for all of this, but never mind.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make the point. I thought Bill and Fred made a great point in the third one listed here, because that is clearly a part of the school executive evaluation instrument. You all will note that it specifically states that celebrations, recognitions, rewards, advancement, that all of those things are as much as possible linked to pre-established criteria, which is indeed the strategic goals and values and objectives of the school. And I think there also needs to be a little bit of a balance, though, that it's okay sometimes just to celebrate and give a pat on the back to someone who planted flowers in the front yard of your school just because they were doing something nice. But as much as possible, it's important to link those recognitions to the strategic goals of the school. That's all I wanted to say.
Good point. You all helped me remember. I talked about this Tuesday night in my 614 class, which is this same content, and I couldn't remember for the life of me. There's a book, something about a drop in the bucket, where you give people a drop. Anybody read that book? What book is that? Who Filled My Bucket? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. We did that many years ago with faculty as we were transitioning to PLCs and doing some team training and things. And it was very effective. We saw a lot of skill building within that structure that helped people learn to make public recognition and to compliment other in support of building culture. So there are strategies out there. There's some good books for that. And that's one that I have had experience with and that we did with all of our administrators, and they in turn did it with all their faculty. So that was a good thing.
And I just wanted to add, my experience with the celebrations. My school was a PBIS school. So, celebration was built into our culture. So not only for the students, but, for the staff as well. And we had many ways of celebrating, but again, it always promoted the vision of value of our school, which was PBIS. So.
Yeah, and I think Barry, that's a good point. I think sometimes many schools who are doing PBIS, at least it's been my experience, fail to pick up on recognizing the faculty. They reward students and recognize students for accomplishment, but they fail to do that for faculty. And I think that modeling, I think, is important. And so I'm glad to hear you say that. It's a good point. All right, you ready to move on? Anybody else? Okay, here we go.
Okay, moving on. I hope you thought hard about that.
You can email Bill and he'd be glad to take your comments.
I'll forward it to Fred.
All right, final thoughts about culture. I think somebody mentioned this in a previous class, but the culture needs constant attention or gardening. This is an awesome quote. Only a very strong, constantly cultivated culture can prevent the weeds of mistrust, disrespect, and uncooperativeness from taking over in the garden. Like we mentioned before, culture really should be the beginning point for PLCs. Once you can actually improve the culture of the school, then it makes it the ground fertile for actually planting the seeds of culture and actually doing PLC.
So a shift in school culture for successful PLCs involves three things. One is a shift in fundamental purpose. Another is a shift in the work of teachers. And the last is a shift in the professional development. So let's talk about the fundamental purpose first. And we've got several quotes here, so we're going to do a little, we don't want to bore you to death. So how about if I do it this way? From a focusing on teaching, Fred.
To a focus on learning.
Okay. From a coverage of content.
To demonstration of proficiency.
And from providing individual teachers with curriculum documents such as state standards and curriculum guides.
To an engaging collaborative teams in building shared knowledge regarding essential curriculum. Now let's look at the shift in the work of the teachers. From isolation.
To a focus on learning.
From individual teachers attempting to discover ways to improve results.
To collaborative teams of teachers helping each other improve.
From privatization of practice.
To open sharing of practice.
From collaboration light on matters unrelated to student achievement.
To collaboration explicitly focused on issues and questions that most impact student achievement. And a shift in professional development from learning by listening
to learning by doing.
And from assessing impact on the basis of teacher satisfaction. Did you like it?
To assessing impact on the basis of evidence of improved student learning.
We've just touched on a couple of the items in there, but if you follow that, we feel you're going to have a culture that will provide the air the PLCs need to take on. And concludes our presentation for this evening.
Good night.
You enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, feel free to give us an email. You can Skype us. You can do whatever you can to get a hold of us. And hopefully you've enjoyed our presentation. Thanks very much.
I don't know about you guys, but I think these guys enjoyed it a little bit too much, perhaps, but did a good job there. Dr. Abernathy, I'll allow you to close that portion out if you'd like.
And I think y'all are only every other word I'm saying. I'm so sorry, but I agree, Dr. Boyles. They did an outstanding job and covered the material very expertly, but also applied it to experiences in their own professional careers. So I thought it was fantastic. And we are going to shift now to focus on learning. Carla and Barry, are you all ready?
We are ready. I just need to know how to get my presentation to come up.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me, what I'm going to do is make you the presenter, and then I'll walk you through that. Okay, Carl?
Okay.
So let me do that. Okay.
And Dr. Boyle, while we're just shifting over, just start saying from the very, very beginning of Bill and Fred's presentation, and I don't necessarily, I'm not asking any of us to respond to this out loud, but just to think about it. On the very first slide, it said you have one of two choices when you're going through change. You can either modify the change to fit the existing culture, or you can alter the culture to fit the upcoming change. And I love that, because probably all of us have been in the situation, in both of those situations, where we had to do one of those things, and then at another time had to do the other. So it's certainly something to reflect upon. Okay, Dr. Boyles, back to you.
Okay, very good. Carla, if you'll go down to the bottom of your screen where it says screen share.
Okay.
And you'll click on that green folder, and it should open up a box with the things that you have open on your desktop on your computer.
Okay. And
okay.
Okay, how do I get that thing out of my way? There we go.
All right, we see focus on learning.
Yeah.
If you'll go ahead and just start that like you normally would a PowerPoint and operate it, we should be able to be able to follow you right there.
And why am I not? There we go.
There you go.
I'm not as familiar with the Google Docs one. Okay, so we had focus on learning, of course, and the 4 main areas for significant school improvement that the book outlined was curriculum, instruction, assessment, and culture. One of the first things that we kind of talked about when we first got together and were thinking about this was some of the positions that our systems have or have created or to assist with curriculum and assist teachers. And I know that like we have what we call lead teachers. I think some systems call them curriculum coordinators or curriculum facilitators. Barry mentioned that in his system they had instructional technology facilitators because they had one-to-one schools. But we kind of had some nice discussion about those kind of positions and what types of things they do to assist with curriculum in the schools. I'd love to hear if you all have the same types of positions or different positions in your systems and the role that they play with curriculum.
Right. Well, Carl, I'll just say, like, in the system I had worked in, because we were one-to-one, we had, which is either the instructional technology facilitator. And in order to pay for that, we as principals, we all agreed to give up one of our, an ADM position in order to fund that. So to get those kind of positions, it's not done in a vacuum. But everyone has to agree to it. And there are principals who struggle. Hey, I can't give up an ADM position, but you also can't run a one-to-one school without an instructional technology facilitator. So I just wanted to put that out there. When you get positions like that, it's a cost-benefit analysis. You give up one thing to get another.
Are there some other types of positions, or can you all share like what your curriculum people do in your schools?
Hey, Carla, this is Scott. I will tell you right now, that was an art or position that has been lost in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County schools. Our curriculum coordinators essentially were testing coordinators. And that was something I think when they've looked back repeatedly over the past few years, how we haven't gotten the growth, we haven't strengthened what we're doing instructionally. They had to step back and realize that that's a possibility, that we probably need to separate them back from that position and put our curriculum coordinators back into, I guess, what you would call a lead teacher or somebody who facilitates instruction and support for the teachers in the school. And we actually had to create and kind of get a little bit of creative math, I guess, to establish our fundings for all of our schools and created positions and to establish separate testing coordinators for the schools. And there's a transitional period that we're trying to go into to get to that point, although it has its own problems in itself. And they're seeing that now. But that was something I think that in our system we've lost. My curriculum coordinator will be the first one to tell you, when it comes to understanding delivery of instruction and the processes needed and steps to be a good teacher or an effective teacher, she can do that. But it's, she even says, in our high school position, she feels very frustrated that for so long she was the testing coordinator. She's really lost her grasp of what the specific areas are, that these folks teach, like what the science department and what their needs and things are to kind of tie into what they're doing, because she hasn't been a part of that anymore. She hasn't been privy to, science department meetings from the central location, for science chairs in our system, or the history chairs or whatever. But I kind of get long-winded here, but just to say that we see the absence of what we're talking about in Forsyth County.
Okay. And you hit a sore spot, because 2 years ago, we had full-time testing coordinators. Last year, they made our lead teachers testing coordinators. They realized that they were just testing coordinators. We didn't get any curriculum coordination anymore. They weren't working with teachers anymore. So this year, they gave it to, guess who? Assistant principals. So I'm the assistant principal and the testing coordinator this year. New fun adventure, let me tell you.
That's how it typically is in my county. The assistant principals are the testing coordinator. We do have instructional technology facilitators, but there's only a handful maybe they have 2 to 3 schools each. out of 10 elementary schools, we still have 2 or 3 elementary schools with lead teachers, but they're giving up a position to fund that, and most of the other principals are deciding not to do that anymore. It does all come back down to the money, though.
Yeah. The book talked about some assumptions about curriculum that needed to be in place for things to be effective. One was that the curriculum should be research-based and provide clarity. And there was some talk about goal statements and systems having public goal statements and even like goal statements that were posted. I've never really seen goal statements posted. Does anybody's county do that?
I would say our county does not do it, but I have seen them posted in individual schools from time to time, but not very often.
Okay. That was one of the things that they recommended, publicly, posting goal statements that everybody had collectively agreed upon, recognized, knew what they were. There was also a lot of discussion about reducing content to focus in on essential, significant learning, and otherwise known as deciding what not to teach. And I know that I was just thinking for myself, it's really hard when working with PLCs. It's hard for some teachers to let go of topics, to let go of some things. And the book pointed out that they have to know the curriculum well enough to know which kinds of things they need to focus on and what kind of things they can give up. Also, discussions I have a lot with PLCs is that the pacing guide is just that. It's a guide. It's not the Bible. It's not you have to be on that topic on that Friday, October the 9th or whatever it is. It is a guide, and the PLC has they can X some things out if they need to. They can put more emphasis on something if they need to. And sometimes I think teachers tend to get away from that focus, that we need to focus on what kids are learning, not on, we have to do all this much by this date. And then the other assumption that it said had to be a guiding assumption was that the curriculum had to enable monitoring of student achievement at the classroom level. So again, as we've already talked about in this session, is that those PLCs monitoring data, looking at data, and what do we do with that data? Teaching only what's important, and then when we teach it, looking at, what are we doing with it? Do they have it? And what do we do if they don't? And what do we do if they already knew it before we had planned to teach it? All those type of questions. One quote I love from the book was, trying to get rid of this thing. Is that in y'all's way? It's on page 165. It says, the major flaw in the curriculum of American public schools is not that schools do not do enough, but they attempt to do too much. And that really kind of resonated with me, made me think of the things we've talked about this semester, especially with reforms and how reforms go on top of other reforms, and then they just pile on top of each other, and we have so much that we are considering. And also, when talking about the curriculum, the same conversation we just had, that sometimes we attempt to do too much to a fault, that we don't do the things that we do with fidelity. Can you guys think of other examples of things that would fit in this quote? It's not that schools don't do enough, but we attempt to do too much.
Hey, Carla, at my school, and I've talked about this a million times, we're a Title I, very low performing, got lots of room to grow. But just like you said, we have thrown 8 million reforms out there when it comes to whether it is parental involvement, whether it is curriculum and instruction, whether it is classroom management, whether it is lesson plan design. I think last year we had like 8 things going on, and the proof was in the pudding that we did a lot of nothing. We did a whole bunch of things, but nothing in any of those areas that actually impacted the growth of our students. So I totally agree with this quote. I can't say how much I agree with it.
Hey, Carla.
Mm-hmm.
This is Dr. Abernathy, and I think that should be a title of a book. Was that Fran? I think you said we did a whole lot of nothing. And I think that would echo the sentiment of lots of people. A lot of times as we pile on those reforms, we never tell anyone that we've abandoned this one or that one. And so people are unsure about what we're still doing or what we're not doing anymore. But I would just say one more thing. When you say about attempting to do too much, if any of y'all have ever read, I think the author is Jamie Vollmer, maybe, Schools Cannot Do It Alone. Dr. Boyles, is that the title? You've probably heard of that book.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
About 75 things that schools have accepted or it's been put on the schools over the last few decades in the name of reform or community or societal needs. And it's just amazing when you look at that list and see exactly to some degree what this quote is also referring to. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abernathy. Anybody else?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I've lost my little, there we go. Okay, we're going to see if this works. I have a little minute clip to show you. Can you all see the video coming up?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Like as I'm watching it, I saw the grammatical errors in it. Oops, sorry. That bugged me. And I didn't notice it until just now. But I liked the message of it, that when we can get those two things to align, the curriculum and the instruction, big things can happen. And that kind of segues us to our next segment there, and Barry's going to take it.
My portion of this is the partner to curriculum instruction, which of course is student learning. And there was a quote, because we're all administrators of some kind. This one resonated with me. Which sometimes we have to reflect and ask ourselves, what kind of leader are we? Are we the kind that just says, I'm a good judge of character. I hired some good folks. They know what they're doing, and I'm just gonna let them roll. They don't really need any observation or monitoring, and they must be doing the right thing with the kids. And of course, the other part is, and the 4 says why. It says because we're lacking commitment or the energy to monitor students. Well, I don't know that any of us as administrators want anyone to think of us as not committed, or certainly lacking any kind of energy to monitor. Like the old saying goes, you have to inspect what you expect. So again, that's how learning starts, and we're accountable for it. So that resonated with me. So the next one here is what this has to do. Hopefully, a lot of you recognize these 4 questions. I realize I wrote them in my language, my Brooklyn language, not the elegant DeFore language. But in my time as principal, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the actual DeFore training for PLC. I don't know if anyone's ever had that opportunity, but if you haven't, I highly recommend you need to go, because it's one thing to read the books. It's a whole different thing to go there and be at these workshops. They're a couple of days worth, and you come away with a lot. And the biggest thing that I think they have things called the big idea. And what's important for me here is, as principal, here's the 4 questions I wanted every one of my teachers to ask themselves when they're in front of a kid. Okay, it's, what do I want them to know? How do I know they're going to know it? What am I going to do with my kids who already know it? And then, of course, what am I going to do with those who don't know it? So even if you can't send every teacher to that PLC training, and God, I wish there was enough money to do it, you need to at least get them to be thinking this way. And if they're thinking this way in a PLC, they're going to accomplish things. At least that's my thought about it. Does anyone have any other thoughts about that? Or okay, all right, let's go to the next one. Okay, and I think you'll these are the DeFore, so you can see this is part of some of the training you would see. I don't know if there's any way to raise the volume.
I've got it as high as it'll go.
Can everybody hear that or no? All right, Carla, let's end this, because
we could send out the link.
Yeah, it's not valuable if you can't hear it. Okay, the next one. And then, so if we go back to those 4 questions, the first one is, how do we get to determine what we want them to know? Okay, and what do we want them to learn is the very first question of what the DeFore say is the heart of the PLC. There's 4 questions, but the first 2 are the heart of the PLC. So what do we want them to, what do we want them to learn? And the other caveat to that is, what we are teaching them relevant. Does this thing matter to their lives? Do we even care that it's relevant or matters to their lives? Anybody have any thoughts about that? Or okay, well, I tell you, a lot of times teachers seemingly are more concerned about the curriculum getting across what they need to, and we don't always hit the relative part. Carly, can we go back? I think, did we miss?
Are you?
Yeah. So here, so this is a student's perspective about what they're learning or not learning.
Okay, I'm gonna try to cut it up from my computer and see if that works.
I wasn't taught how to get a job, but I can remember dissecting a frog. I wasn't taught how to pay tax, but I know loads about Shakespeare's classics. I was never taught how to vote. They devoted that time to defining isotopes. I wasn't taught how to look after my health, but mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Never spent a lesson on current events. Instead, I studied the old American West. I was never taught what laws there are. I was never taught what laws there are. Let me repeat, I was not taught the laws for the country I live in, but I know how Henry VIII killed his women. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Now that's in my head instead of financial advice. I was shown the wavelengths of different hues, right? But I was never taught my human rights. Apparently there's 30. Do you know them? I don't. Why the hell can't we both recite them by rote? I know igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks, yet I don't know squat about trading stocks or how money works at all. Where does it come from? How does the thing that motivates the world function? Not thought to budget and disperse my earnings. I was too busy there rehearsing cursed. Didn't learn how much it costs to raise a kid and what an affidavit is, but I spent days on what the quadratic equation is. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. They made me learn that over basic first aid, or how to recognize the most deadly mental disorders or diseases with preventable causes, or how to buy a house with a mortgage if I could afford it, because abstract maths was deemed more important than advice that would literally save thousands of lives. But it's cool, because now I can tell you if the number of unnecessary deaths caused by that choice was prime. Never taught present-day practical medicines, but I was told what the ancient Hippocratic method is. I've got a headache, the pain is ceaseless, what should I take? Maybe try some leeches? Could we discuss domestic abuse and get the facts, or how to help my depressed friend with a mental state? No, but learn mental maths, because you won't have a calculator with you every day. They say it's not the kids, the parents are the problem. Then if you taught the kids to parent, that's the problem solved then. Or this advice about using a condom, but not for when you actually have a kid, but you want one. I'm only fluent in this language, but serious, the rest of the world speaks too. Do you think I'm an idiot? I chose to solo over the political system, so like a typical citizen, now I don't know what I'm voting on. Which policies exist or how to make them change, maybe je parle un peu de français. So at 18, I was expected to elect a representative for a system I had never, ever been presented with. But I won't take it. I'll tell everyone my childhood was wasted. I'll share it everywhere how I was educated, and insist these pointless things don't stay in school.
Okay, so we can see that this young man not happy with the education received, kind of frustrated. So I guess my question to the group is, do we teach a relevant curriculum? Anyone? Did you guys hear me?
I think that we teach relevant curriculum. It just depends on your school. I think our teachers try to do a good job of making learning very relevant for students. We're a project-based learning school, so the whole focus is on relevancy, producing a public product, actually solving real-life problems. So I think that if we do it in that kind of way, then your curriculum actually is very relevant, and the students actually, find it to be applicable.
Okay, great. All right, so when we're getting that curriculum across, and as teachers, and we're reflecting and say, what do we do with those who already know it? Okay, so teachers have different methods, different means on how they determine whether students know the work, and if they do that pre-assessment, how do we actually keep kids gainfully employed and meaningfully, not just giving them worksheets or being a peer tutor, but actually a meaningful and gainful way of moving the curriculum? Or can we just continue to keep them moving through the curriculum on their own pace? And I asked you guys, do we even have the autonomy to move kids at their own pace? Because kids have to be in school 180 days. I mean, where is our autonomy with these students? If the kids already got it, can we move them on to the next lesson while we're working with the kids who don't know it? Anybody any thoughts on that?
Barry, I'll tell you, that's a question I think a lot of us, even in my school, we probably grapple with all the time is, even the way that we've developed our set of learning. In our schools, you have 32 chances to essentially get 22 hours credit to graduate through high school, in our setting, the way we have it set up. But at the same time, it's kind of like you wonder why we can't even make it even more streamlined. Why would what's the problem with the fear factor, I guess, that the powers that be have in letting the kids get done with high school at a faster rate, or I'm just speaking from the high school level, but having them get through faster. I mean, what problem is there for them to get through if they know the material, or they already have an idea of what they're going to be doing, what they want to do, how they want to learn it. That's the one thing I think that we probably have looked at in all of, the research that we've done and the videos that we've seen and examples we've seen is all, several of these other countries that focus on that or make that a force that they want to put out there for others to drive with, is letting them have their own learning or self-discovery and self-pace on their learning.
Right. Well, I'm going to throw something controversial out here to stimulate some thoughts. In the Army or in the military, we have a saying we train to standard, not to time, because the standards and getting the mission accomplished is the single most important thing we do. I will propose to you that it is the complete opposite in education, that our single most important variable is time. We'd rather train to time or teach to time than to teach the standard. So I throw that out there to see what, other thoughts are.
Yeah, it goes back again to what you said. What we were just talking about is
right.
What are we focused on all the time? It seems like for so many years now. How can we compare our educational system to that of other countries? And the first thing that a lot of researchers say that we're not doing, or certain research says, is we're not in school long enough. Some of them say our 185 days, and then they say, well, we're there. So this country does it 220, this country does it in 200, and it goes back to the old quality versus quantity.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I argue the fact of who's to say that we really even need to even be less than the 185 if what we're doing every single minute of every single day, that we're working with these kids, is it meaningful and is it jam-packed with stuff that they need to know to get it in, to get it in so they understand it and give them some good quality time to do it, not just to, cram it in so we can have it in. That's the biggest, I think, frustration that we see as administrators in my system, especially like at the tail end of the year, when we're talking about finishing them up and having kids test and get through is for the most part, they've gotten the information. What else do we need to kill them with other than just eating up time? And it goes right to what you said with that statement, which I think is true. I like that statement, Barry.
Right. Because my own kids, when they're in middle school, we all know EOGs are before EOCs. Dad, why do I have to be in school? I just finished my EOGs. Well, you've got to be there. The teachers are going to have something productive for you to do for the next week or so, because that's what we tell them. So.
Those of you who are in high schools, and I will admit freely that I'm not up on this because it came about as I was leaving the superintendency, but what's going on with the credit by mastery, credit by demonstration of mastery? Because that gets at what you're talking about a little bit, Barry, here.
Yes.
Is anybody doing anything with that in their high schools?
Well, I can tell you how we did it in my county, Union County. The credit by demonstrated masteries was only for the EOC courses. Mm-hmm. And, so middle school students, rising ninth grade students, they had the ability to take the test twice a year, once I think it was in February, and then again in the summer. And so they would essentially take the EOC, and they'd have to get a 4, at least a 4 on it, a 4 or a 5. If they didn't score that, then they would have to take the course again. And then, so if they manage to do that, then when they get to high school, let's say it was for English 2, or biology, if they took the demonstrated mastery course and they passed it, they would just take a different science course when they get to high school. But that's how we did it there. I don't know if they're doing any other subjects now, but it was strictly the EOC ones when we were doing it.
Well, our county does the EOC and the NCFEs and does sort of kind of the same thing. They take the test. They have to score really high on the test. But in addition, there's 2 parts. Even if they do get a 5 or 4 or whatever on the test, then there's like a project-based component where they have to do some type of project that demonstrates their knowledge in addition. But I think it's just an LEA decision how that's done.
Yeah, I was just pulling it up, and as you all were talking about it on my phone, and the rulemaking at the State Board of Education level says that credit by demonstrated mastery shall be available to students in grades 9 to 12. But it says students shall demonstrate mastery through a multi-phase assessment consisting of a final exam of one standard of a, students shall demonstrate mastery through a multi-phase assessment consisting of number one, a standard examination, which shall be the EOC or EOG where applicable, or a final exam developed locally, and two, an artifact which requires the student to apply knowledge and skills relevant to content standards. So I think there's some leeway there, but again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think there's some opportunities in place for us to start exploring that. But again, back to your question, Barry, I'm not sure how many people are doing it. I'm not sure how many LEAs are. And again, I confess I'm not as up to date on that as I would have been, a year and a half ago, as still serving as superintendent. But I think, I think there's some avenues in place for us that probably, back to your point, we're not availing ourselves of.
Right. Well, I know another thing we had in Union County was when students became seniors. You know how it is. Traditionally, in the past, has been seniors had to take 4 courses regardless. They only needed English 4 something to graduate, and we were just giving them courses to keep them in school. Well, we changed that where students only had to come for half a day, so they only took 2 credits, assuming they had everything they needed to graduate. So we were working towards that. So I'm not sure if any other school district does things like that, but that's what we were doing. Okay, and then the next one, with the final question, is, and this one is near and dear to my heart because my career has been with at-risk youth. So what do we do if they don't know it? So I think it begins with, the first part is, it begins with the teacher in the classroom. They have to ask themselves, okay, is it, they have to first assess their own practices, and it's basically they're looking at 2 things. If almost everybody in the class got it, except, maybe a couple of kids did not, well then, okay, then my lesson was probably good, and I need to do something specific with these, 1 or 2 kids who didn't get it. But if the vast majority of my kids did not get the lesson, well, then I got to be looking at myself saying, what did I do wrong? Let me reflect on this lesson and reteach it a different way. Not the same way, not just modifying it, but actually going back and figuring out how can I reteach this lesson so that everybody gets it. So that's the first part. But then if after that we determine we've got some, even with all that going on, if we have some students that no matter what we try aren't getting it, then we have to look at other ways, more intensive interventions at this point. I know we used to call it RTI. Now they use the MTSS, multi-tier system of supports. That's not going to be for everybody. I mean, there's the universal tiers, but then as we're doing this, we're going to identify the kids who really need intensive needs. I don't know, does anyone out there, a particular school, have a process for the kids are not getting it?
Yeah, we're just starting now to use the sheltered instruction operational procedure, or SIOP. We've had, in fact, we just had 11 of our staff members go to the training sessions, and they'll still go through the rest of the year. And we're going to use that as part of our early release development. We did this the last early release last week, and then next week we'll have another one. We kind of had them really back to back this past 2 months, but we're kind of doing that, and the focus in on that is not only for the kids that don't get it, but struggle to get it right off the bat. So that's where we're looking at the leeway of using the alternate approach and creating focus classes of students that need that constant revision and work towards it, and then at that point, then eventually, matriculating them back into more of a setting so that they'll kind of fall in with standard as need be. So we are touching on that in our system.
Hey, I know what I found frustrating. I saw a cross-section of the population across the district, and found a lot of times, kids were, either mislabeled when it came to the EC process. Some kids were placed in EC, had no business being in EC, and then other kids who needed EC, but EC services, but never received it. All I can guess, once we applied our RTI process and we got to know the kid, we did one or the other, either, and it was mostly placing them in EC or the proper EC program they needed to be in. I don't know, anyone have any experiences like that at all? Or because that one is, it should make any leader angry if you're getting kids like that, because somewhere along the line we failed them and something dropped. Okay, and then we'll look at the last slide here, caller. Okay, and this MTSS process, this is really the real formal process of providing interventions for students, as opposed to the initial one I talked about, where teachers doing that self-reflection and looking at the onesies and twosies they have in their class. And then I think the final process is, if anyone has any final thoughts or questions, that ends it for Carla and I. Thanks.
Great job to both of you. Thank you for the level of detail and just taking us through those steps one by one. That was outstanding, and thank you for your hard work on that, Barry and Carla. Well done.
How do I give this back?
I'll get it.
Okay.
I'm taking it back as we speak.
Okay.
So let's see if I can do it. Okay, I think I'm the host now. So, all right. There we go. All right, Dr. Abernathy, is there anything that you want to add there?
No, I think we had a great night, 2 fantastic presentations, and I think we're good to go as far as housekeeping.
Okay, let me do one thing here as we kind of think about closing up. Can you all see the weekly tasks? Is that up there for you?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me talk a little bit about the weekly task, and then we'll go. I want to go back to what I alluded to at the beginning, and before I do that, let me say again, as well as Dr. Abernathy, good job tonight. Carl and Barry and Fred Bill did a good job on their presentation too. So thank you all. Good work tonight. I know that we kind of threw a curve at you last weekend, and I know some of you have stressed a little bit over that with submitting these things. Most of you have your reform research paper submitted through Blackboard. A few of you haven't. And so if you haven't done that, you need to get that done, because it's time for that to be in. You should have had that done last weekend. So go ahead and submit that through Blackboard. If you have struggles with how to do that, you shouldn't. But if you do, let me know. And I think I said this at the first weekend we met. Anytime you're stressing over using Blackboard and submitting something through Blackboard, just email it to me. We'll be fine with that. We'll make it work. The other thing was to make a recording of your presentation. Some have done, like Bill and Fred did, just talking over a PowerPoint. Others just stood and did your presentation. Got a couple of those, but get those to me. I'm trying to filter through those. I've got a couple that I need to check on, and once I kind of get the bulk of those in, then I'll download those or upload those actually to YouTube, and we'll create a playlist on YouTube where you can watch all those, the ones I've had a chance to see. There's some good ones coming in. So go ahead and get that to me if you haven't, and if you can't do it through Blackboard, if that's a problem for you, just email it to me. That'll be fine. Item 2 here, you should continue working on your system reform plan. We're about halfway through the course. We've got fall break coming up here in a week or so, and so you should be getting close. Your needs assessment needs to be well underway. You need to be making progress there so that you can turn pretty quickly to your system reform plan. Don't let that end of the course slip up on you. We've got some presentation topics for next Thursday night. I believe these are our last 3, Dr. Abernathy, the 3 with leadership roles, Kevin and Tammy, impact on teaching, John and Scott, and then training and professional development by Fran and Jamie will finish us up. One thing we talked about early in the semester that that we've not talked about, or I talked about at the beginning, was journaling, and would ask that wanted you, as we talked about at the end, to just keep some thoughts, some things about how your thinking is developing and changing as it relates to school reform and PLCs and other things, reflections as you work on your artifact, and just keep those in a format that's convenient for you. Well, I want you to go ahead and submit those to us through Blackboard. There's a place for that in the week 10 folder. And so by next Thursday, if you'll submit those journals, again, that's part of the grade. It's a small part, but go ahead and submit those. And then, again, make sure, and I kind of put that down there twice, but make sure your reform research paper has been submitted, and we'll get those posted. So are there questions about any of those things? Anybody? Any of that tonight? Any questions?
No questions, Dr. Boyles, but I think you and I also wanted just to let everyone know that these items are trickling in, so we're not going to have a super quick, like 24-hour turnaround on our feedback. And we appreciate everybody's patience
yes,
as we're working through fitting an abbreviated time frame.
Yeah, and we're having to exchange some of that information electronically so that we can both read those papers. So we give you some good feedback on those things. That's good. Particularly, and I'm the couple of the research papers that I've looked at today that had come in and I had a chance to look at today. Some good things going on. It gives me a good opportunity to give you some feedback on some things I see as it relates to, and Dr. Abernathy as well, as it relates to what you'd be doing on your literature review. I think that's the value for it. Can give you some good feedback on citing those sources and things. So found that to be helpful in past semesters as we've done this course. So again, any other questions? Anything that we need to talk about tonight? Well, you have the schedule, you have the assignments. Again, those who are presenting next week, if you'll be prepared to do that. And with that said, we'll say good night to everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.